I am not going to cry. I've gone through a lot. I deserve some peace.
Every widow at the funeral collapsed crying. Only one woman stood completely still. Before the grave was even covered, the whole village called her a murderer. But the woman crying loudest beside her had a secret nobody was ready for. Before we go any further, my people, tap that button and subscribe. Hit the bell so you no go miss our sweet, sweet story. Because if you leave before this story ends, you will miss the twist everyone is talking about. Do it now, then keep watching. In the village of Erinla, there lived a woman named Folake, married to a respected trader named Baba Ige. He was a complicated man. In public, he was generous, sharing his harvest with struggling neighbors, lifting crying children onto his shoulders at festivals, donating grain during hard seasons. Behind closed doors, he was a different man entirely, controlling every part of Folake's life, deciding what she wore, who she spoke to, even how loudly she was allowed to laugh in her own home. Years earlier, in a rage no one else ever witnessed, he had made her promise something strange, that if he died first, she would never cry for him in front of the village, since tears, he said, belonged only to those who truly grieved, and he did not trust hers. Folake had buried that promise deep, along with 15 years of quiet sorrow, never once imagining she would have to keep it. So when Baba Ege suddenly collapsed one evening after dinner and died before the healer could arrive, the entire village gathered to mourn a man they believed they knew completely. At the burial, women threw themselves on the ground, wailing. Folake stood perfectly still, her face calm, her eyes dry. Bisi, Baba Ige's sister, held her tightly, weeping and comforting her, whispering that she understood grief could freeze a person solid. For the first days after, Bisi was the only person who stayed by Folake's side, cooking for her, hugging her children, defending her once when someone in the market called her heartless. She never smiled around him, someone murmured anyway. I thought she was just shy, another replied. Within 3 days, despite Bisi's early kindness, the whisper spread beyond anyone's control. Women abandoned the well the moment Folake arrived. Customers stopped buying her cloth. Children called her killer. The elders summoned her before the village. Why did you not weep for your husband? The elder demanded. Folake could not explain the promise without shaming her husband's memory, so she said only, I cannot explain it, but I did not kill him. You have 7 days to bring proof of your innocence, or you will leave this village forever. Folake was banished to the edge of the forest. Her children were taken in by Bisi, who continued visiting her in secret at first, bringing food. Though her visits slowly grew shorter, her comfort slowly thinner, though Folake was too consumed by grief to notice the change. 3 nights into her exile, her 12-year-old son Kunle snuck away to find her. Something had been bothering him since the funeral, a memory he almost mentioned before quickly changing the subject, unsure if it meant anything at all. That night, he caught his mother holding a small wooden box she quickly tried to hide. What is that, Mama? Folake hesitated a long moment before finally opening it. Inside were letters written in her father's hand during his long trading journeys. The first letter Kunle read was full of warmth, a father missing his children. Folake quickly took it back, folding it away, unwilling yet to share the rest. It took another night before she showed him the second letter, an apology, vague and unfinished, for something Baba again never named directly. Folake burnt that one afterward, unable to watch her son learn the details of what his father had truly been like at home. But the third letter she kept and finally let Kunle read completely. In it, Baba Ige confessed to years of cruelty he was too proud to admit face to face, and the strange promise he had forced from his wife that she would never cry for him, so the village would never see what he believed were false tears. He knew, Folake whispered. He knew exactly what he'd done to me. He just made sure I could never explain it, even after he was gone. Then how did he die, Mama? Kunle asked. I don't know, she admitted. Back in the village, the healer who had helped prepare the funeral meal mentioned quietly to another woman that the soup had tasted strange that final evening. No one paid attention at the time. It wasn't until days later, watching BC grow oddly anxious whenever the subject of the meal came up, that the healer's memory returned and she went back to check the spice tin she'd noticed sitting slightly out of place in BC's kitchen weeks before. Kunle, walking past the cooking hut one afternoon, suddenly remembered the detail he had almost told his mother days earlier, a moment weeks before his father's death, when he'd seen his aunt pouring something from his small pouch into the family spice tin, and she told him quickly it was a blessing for good health. He hadn't thought of it since. Now it wouldn't leave his mind. The healer brought her suspicions before the elders. BC denied everything, insisting she'd done nothing but grieve her brother properly, unlike the wife who couldn't manage a single tear. For a moment, the elders wavered, swayed by BC's tears and Folake's continued silence. It was Kunle who finally spoke, stepping forward with the memory he could no longer keep to himself. The square fell silent. BC looked around slowly, searching the crowd for just one face that still believed her. There wasn't one. She broke down, confessing she had poisoned her brother's meals for months. Our father spent his whole life humiliating me in front of Baba Ige, telling him I was the daughter who amounted to nothing, while giving him everything, the land, the respect, all of it. I spent years caring for our father while my brother traveled and got praise for simply coming home. I hated what our father made me become. The village stood in horrified silence. Folake, banished and humiliated for a crime she never committed, had been innocent from the beginning. The elders publicly apologized and restored Folake's home and children to her. But the healing did not happen in a single afternoon. The women who once turned away from her at the well came one by one over the following weeks to apologize quietly at her doorway. Her market stall slowly filled again with customers too ashamed to meet her eyes at first. Kunle stayed close beside her every day, no longer leaving her side even to sleep, as though making up for the nights he once doubted her. The first night Folake finally slept peacefully in her own home again without fear of banishment or a promise hanging over her, she wept. Not for her husband, but for herself, for 15 years finally set down. Months later, going through the last of Baba Ige's old belongings, Folake found a final letter she had never seen before, hidden inside a hollow in his old walking stick. It was addressed not to her, but to Kunle, written years earlier when the boy was still small. In it, Baba Ige begged his son to be a gentler husband than he had ever managed to be, admitting he already knew even then the kind of man he could not stop himself from becoming. Folake never remarried, choosing instead to raise her children in peace. Years later, whenever another funeral passed through Erinla, people stopped judging the widow who cried too much or the widow who didn't cry at all, remembering the season grief taught the whole village that silence sometimes carries more truth than any tears ever could. Now, listen, if this story gripped you the way I think it did, do not close this video without subscribing. Hit that button, turn on the bell, and drop a comment telling me who you suspected first. We post a brand new African folktale every single week, and trust me, you do not want to be scrolling past when the next one drops.